Hello, hello, hello. Man, oh man, my foot hurts. I've been busy. I just refereed some basketball games, and I got kind of that plantar fasciitis, whatever it is. Ugh, heel hurts. Been a few days since my last video. Sorry to my, 3 viewers for that one. Genesis 19, though. Let's get into it. These last 2 chapters, I'm getting annoyed. They keep doubling the stories and the chapters here in Genesis. I don't get that. 1 story per chapter. Come on. I know it's the divine inspired word of God, but we organize the chapters, so we kind of fumbled up on that one in my opinion. But Genesis 19, like I said, 2 stories, so let's get after it. I'm going to do the New International Version for this reading, just because it gets kind of complicated. But no, again, like I always say, King James is probably the best one to go through. That's what I read, but just for interpretation on the video, I'm going to read from the New International Version. So, verse 1. The 2 angels, okay, let me rewind actually. So Genesis 18 was how these 2 angels approached Abraham in the heat of the day, with Jesus was with them, or the Word, the Lord, whatever you want to call it. And basically Abraham pleads the case for Sodom and Gomorrah, saying, can you find at least 10 good men and then you'll spare the city? And Christ's like, okay, fine. And he sends basically these 2 angels on a reconnaissance mission. Now Christ and God already knows that he won't be able to find 10 righteous men, but the whole point was to show that it's okay to humbly ask God and request things from God. So that's what happened in 18. And the angels were heading to Sodom and Gomorrah to do this reconnaissance mission to look for the righteous people, to see if it was really as evil and bad in the city as the woes that God had heard. So these are the 2 angels. The 2 angels arrived in Sodom in the evening, and Lot was sitting in the gateway of the city. When he saw them, he got up to meet them and bowed down with his face to the ground. My lords, he said, please turn aside to your servant's house. You can wash your feet and spend the night and then go on your way early in the morning. Now, just like with Abraham, it doesn't really make it clear if Lot knows that these are angels, at least at the time or not. We'll get into later on whether or not he knows. He probably does, just like Abraham probably did. But just as Abraham was being a good person, waiting at the heat of the day for travelers to come along, this is what Lot's doing. He's waiting at the gate to basically save people. Because if you don't know what's going on in Sodom and Gomorrah, Sodom sees it as virtuous to rape newcomers. Like, that is the virtuous thing to do. I know it sounds crazy, but that's literally what's going on. And Lot's trying to save people. He's waiting at the gateway for travelers so that he can invite them into his house to save them from the people, or turn them away from the city, or to give them food for travelers. He, just like Abraham, he has accepted the word of God, the message of God, which is to be a good person, to be a servant of your neighbor. And he's waiting to do that. So remember that right away. And he begs these 2 angels, which probably is aware they're angels when he sees them. And we'll get into why in a little bit. But he begs them to come to his house to, eat food and stay there for the night. Don't go out in the city at night. It's not a safe place. So the angels answered, no, they answered, we will spend the night in the square. But he insisted so strongly that they did go with him and entered his city. He prepared a meal for them, baking bread without yeast, and they ate. So he begs them to come to his house because he knows it's safe there. And he probably is like, hey, this is the right thing to do. These are angels of God. I got to take care of them. I got to show them that I'm a good person, a righteous person, because that's what God expects of me. Verse 4. But they're like, no, we got to go out to the city. We got to go to the square. And because their whole point of being there is to be on a reconnaissance mission to find out what's really going on in the city. Lot's kind of like doesn't want him to know. He's like, no, trust me. Come in my house. Have a meal with me. Trust me. So they're like, yeah, all right, whatever. They go in verse 4. Before they had gone to bed, all the men from every part of the city of Sodom, both young and old, surrounded the house. They called to Lot, where are the men who came to you tonight? Bring them out so that we can have sex with them. Now, in King James Version, it says so that we may know them. The King James Version The New King James Version is so that we may know them carnally. So that's what they're saying. They want to have sex with these angels. What the F? Like, what? All the men from every part of the city, old and young, came to want to have sex with these angels. Now, these people may just think they're men. They may think they're angels. Who knows? Why do they want to do this? Is it just their society? Probably. That's the most likely thing. Because again, and there's archaeological evidence, there's plenty of evidence to suggest that the people of this plain, the cities of the plain of Sodom and Gomorrah, were worshiping not only false gods, but gods where sex orgies and sacrifice and rape and this stuff was seen as good by their god. So this is what they have to do to honor their god. But also, the gods they worship are technically the fallen angels. And they're pretty aware that they're the fallen angels. They see the fallen angels as the good guys, but they still know that they're the fallen angels. And they also know that their heroes were the descendants, the demigods, of the descendants of these fallen angels mating with humans. They were wiped out by the flood. You don't have to believe this, but this is what the people of Sodom and Gomorrah believed. So understand that. It's not necessarily important for you to believe that that's what happened, but that they believed that's what happened. So if they were at all aware that these were angels, they may very well have wanted to have sex with them so much because they thought that they could bring back their heroes of old. Again, you don't need to believe that, but believe that that's what they thought. You know, and maybe they weren't aware that they are angels. Which almost, I don't know which one's worse. They're all pretty bad. Like, if they're just regular dudes and they're demanding to have sex with them because they're in their city and that's, like, the price you have to pay, that's pretty bad. If they want to have sex with them because they're angels so they can bring back their demigods, that's pretty awful, too. Like, either way, you're in a cesspool of sin. Moving on, verse 6. Lot went outside to meet them and shut the door behind him and said, "No, my friends, don't do this wicked thing." His friends? You got to pick better friends, Lot. Don't do this wicked thing. Look. Oh my God. Here's where it gets funny. Look, I have 2 daughters who have never slept with a man. Let me bring them out to you, and you can do what you like with them. But don't do anything to these men, for they have come under the protection of my roof. What? What? Okay, at this point, you better know that they're angels. Otherwise, even then, even if you do know they're angels, like, you're offering your virgin daughters so that they'll leave these angels alone. You better know they're angels, because if these are just regular dudes, you're the worst dad in the world. You're already a pretty bad dad, even if they are angels. I mean, I get what you're doing. Whether you know they're angels or you think they're men, you're trying to protect them. Great. Don't protect them by offering your virgin daughters. Kind of low. Kind of a low one. I honestly doubt that God or the angels are very happy with this. More than likely, God's kind of like, hey, I appreciate what you're doing, but no, don't do it like that. Again, he's offering his virgin daughters to have sex so these men can have sex with them instead of these 2 angel, beautiful men-looking guys. Before I go any further, and I'll put this in the link, one of the funniest sketches I've ever seen. It's a cartoon done by the Professor Brothers, and it's Bible study by the Professor Brothers. And they talk about Sodom and Gomorrah and Genesis 19. And it's hilarious. And at one point, they're like, it's a professor telling his class about Genesis 19. And he's like, so Lot offers his 2 virgin daughters. Take my virgin daughters and do with them whatever you like. Take my virgin daughters, who probably weren't even virgins anyway. And then there goes to a still frame sketch of the girls going like, yeah, I'll link it. It's hilarious. So he offers his... Again, I don't think that God or the angels were too happy with... They understood what he was doing, and they probably were like, hey, thanks, but don't do it like that. Don't offer your daughters. Just tell the men no, and say this is wrong, and end it there. Yeah, anyway, verse 9. Get out of our way, they replied. This fellow came here as a foreigner, and now he wants to play the judge? We'll treat you worse than them. They kept bringing pressure on Lot and moved forward to break down the door. So, Lot's a foreigner to Sodom. It's not his native place. He doesn't follow their religion or their culture or their ways. And he's trying to tell them that what they're doing is a wicked thing. So like, who are you to judge us, man? Like, you're not even one of us. How doesn't this tie into our modern culture? Like how we're always told we can't judge other cultures. You're not from that culture. You can't judge them. Yeah, I can. I can be like, hey, what you're doing is pretty wrong. You're not from our culture. You don't know our ways. Well, I know that having sex with foreigners because they're in your land and you feel like you deserve to rape them simply because they're in your land is wrong, no matter where you're at. It's wrong. Sorry. You're not one of us. You can't judge us. Yeah, I totally can. That's wrong. So they're like, whatever, we're going to treat you worse than we treat them. Which I'm like, what does that mean? You want to rape these angels. You want to rape them. So how is treating Lot worse than that? Like, what are you going to do to Lot? Like, that's a scary thought right there. We're going to treat you worse than we're going to treat these men that we want to rape. What are you going to do to him, man? So the crowd starts closing in on him because he said what they're about to do is wicked. And they're like, screw you. You're not from our city. You don't know our ways. Verse 10. But the men inside reached out. These are the angels inside his house. Reached out and pulled Lot back into the house and shut the door. Then they struck the men who were at the door of the house, young and old, with blindness so they could not find the door. All right, so if you don't know they're angels by now, now you do. Everyone's blind, so they can't find the door. Like, that's what's funny to me. So does that mean they were stricken blind and they were still trying to find the door? Like, that's how bad they wanted to have sex with these angels? Like, if you were just suddenly stricken blind, wouldn't you be a little bit more concerned with what just happened? Why can't I see? But yet, it makes it sound like they're still looking for the door. They really, really want to bang these angels, like bad. Again, it's their religion. If they're aware they're angels, then they really want to bang them because that brings back their demigods and their kings. If they're not aware they're angels, it's still part of their religion because they're foreigners in their land and that's like their sacrifice. They have to have sex and rape the foreigners that travel through. So it's a city to avoid. I don't really get why Lot's living there. Moving on, verse 14. So Lot went out and spoke to his son-in-law. Oh wait, I'm sorry, verse 12. The two men said to Lot, do you have anyone else here, sons-in-law, sons or daughters, or anyone else in the city who belongs to you? Get them out of here, because we are going to destroy this place. The outcry to the Lord against its people is so great that he has sent us to destroy it. So Abraham pleaded his case in chapter 18 for finding 10 righteous men. Every man from every corner of the city, you'd be like, yeah, right. No. Every man from every corner of the city came here and wanted to basically rape these guys. And I'm sure it wasn't every single one of them, but it was such a high number that basically they knew the only righteous people would be Lot's family. So they're like, hey, you get your family and get out of here. You're the only ones who will possibly be righteous. And there's no way we're going to find enough righteous people in this city. It just isn't going to happen. They already knew that going in. Verse 14. So Lot went out and spoke to his sons-in-law who were pledged to marry his daughters. He said, hurry and get out of this place, because the Lord is about to destroy the city. But his sons-in-law thought he was joking. I mean, you would. You probably would not believe the guy. Then again, if you were living in a city where child sacrifice and blood orgies and raping strangers just because they're in your land and wanting to have sex with fallen angels because they'll bring back your demigods was your culture, I would think that's a joke. So if you're living in such a deceived world, you're going to be, I mean, you're deceived. So something that is actually makes sense is going to sound like a joke. You know, and it's hard for us to understand, you know, what's going on here. And again, any one of us would probably think, you know, if somebody came and was like, dude, the city's going to, a good, righteous, honest man that we knew was a good man, and we were going to marry his daughter, and we knew him to be a good, honest, righteous person, and we were living in a sinful city, just sin everywhere. I'm not talking like to our kind of sin. I'm talking like child sacrifice, like sin. If we were living in that society, oh, if we were righteous, we would not see it as a joke. We'd be like, yeah, God would destroy the city. I mean, of course he would. A righteous person would destroy the city because this city is beyond saving. Then again, if you have accepted that culture and denied Christ in your heart, denied the message of God, then you would be like, whatever, what a joke. I mean, again, it's hard. It would be hard not to see it as a joke. You've been so deceived by the city that you live in. Even if you knew it was not a good place, you'd probably still think he was joking. But you would be like, all right, I'll leave with you. But yeah, right, it's going to be destroyed. But they wouldn't even leave with him. They wouldn't even leave the city with him because they had become so enamored by the sin, the temptation, the earthly desires of the flesh that they were freely allowed to partake of in the city. Their city was great. Their city was powerful. Destroy it. Psh. Verse 15. With the coming of dawn, the angels urged Lot, saying, hurry, take your wife and your 2 daughters who are here, or you will be swept away when the city is punished. When he hesitated, the men grasped his hand and the hands of his wife and of his 2 daughters and led them safely out of the city, for the Lord was merciful to them. So, the Lord is saving the righteous. Just like Abraham was like, would you really destroy the righteous with the wicked? Is that the righteous thing to do? No, he never was going to. Now, he wanted Abraham to see this of his own accord, but he's never planning on doing that anyway. These angels are basically forcing Lot to get out of here now. And, he's got 3 women with him, so of course they're like taking forever to get ready, I'm sure. Honey, seriously, let's go. This is an order from God. Just a minute. And then you got 2 daughters on top of that. So the angels basically scurry them out of there so that they can save their lives. Verse 17, as soon as they had brought them out, one of them said, flee for your lives. Don't look back and don't stop anywhere in the plain. Flee to the mountains or you will be swept away. But Lot said to them, no, my lords, please. Your servant has found favor in your eyes, and you have shown great kindness to me in sparing my life. But I can't flee to the mountains. This disaster will overtake me, and I'll die. Look, here is a town near enough to run to, and it is small. Let me flee to it. It is very small, isn't it? Then my life will be spared. He said to him, the angel said to him, very well, I will grant this request to you. I will not overthrow the town you speak of, but flee there quickly, because I cannot do anything until you reach it. This is why the town is called Zor, which means small. Now, Zor becomes actually a powerful town, but it wasn't at this time. Sodom and Gomorrah were the powerful cities in the area. And Lot, just think about this. Abraham pleaded to save Sodom mainly because of his nephew Lot. Lot pleads to save Zor, the neighboring little town, and that happens. So they're saving people. They're saving people from destruction. This is an amazing thing that people overlook in this story all the time, is how they're saving fellow people along the way. There's the whole town of Zor is saved because of Lot, and Lot was saved because of Abraham. And it all comes back to them humbly, meekly requesting this of the Lord. He calls, you've been kind to me. He says, no, my Lord, please, your servant has found favor. He's like, I'm your servant. Please, you've been so kind. You've been so gracious. Please, please, please. I'm an old man running up to the mountains in a hurry like this. I won't be able to make the trip. I'll die. Please let us go to this small town right here next to us. Please spare the town. And they're like, please, I beg of you. I'm your humble servant, meek as can be. And because he's humble, because he's not demanding it, yeah, okay, great, but make sure you do that. Verse 23, by the time Lot reached Zor, the sun had risen over the land. Then the Lord rained down burning sulfur on Sodom and Gomorrah from the Lord out of the heavens. Thus he overthrew those cities and the entire plain, destroying all those living in the cities, and also the vegetation in the land. But Lot's wife looked back, and she became a pillar of salt. That Professor Brothers thing is another good part about this wife here, but I'll put it in the link and you can watch it for yourself. The whole point of what I'm getting at what I want to make here is that it all says looked back. That doesn't mean she just turned her shoulder and was turned to a pillar of salt. What they're saying is that she yearned to go back. She watched it and wanted to go and run back to the city, and she stopped running away. And of course, the blast turned her into ashes, basically, into a pillar of salt. It destroyed her. Because it wasn't just like a look, let's see what's going on there. It was, but she looked back. She yearned to be back. She desired to be back. She missed her home. She wanted to be with those people, and she didn't continue fleeing up the mountain or to Zoar to safety. Basically, she stalled and had second thoughts, and she probably, in my opinion, she probably kind of wandered back to the city. Like, what's going on? No, no, no. Instead of continuing to get away from it. Verse 23. Oh, I'm sorry. Never mind. Verse 27. Early the next morning, Abraham got up and returned to the place where he had stood before the Lord. He looked down toward Sodom and Gomorrah, toward all the land of the plain, and he saw dense smoke rising from the land, like smoke from a furnace. So basically a giant meteor shower just destroyed this entire plain with all these cities on it, including Lot's wife was yearning to be in the city, didn't want to leave, just wanted to look back, go back, and she didn't continue fleeing, and she was destroyed. She was wiped out with them. Now there's actually tons of evidence, like there's glass, when sand is heated or in a nuclear explosion or something, it turns to glass. And in these plains that they're talking about, there's these giant areas where history says that there was a city, and now there's this glass. Like, it's crazy how much the science actually backs up what the Bible is saying. And Abraham, it says, so when God destroyed the cities of the plain, he remembered Abraham, and he brought Lot out of catastrophe that overthrew the cities where Lot had lived. So Abraham gets up the next morning, he looks over, and he sees the fires, and he sees the smoke, and he knows what's happened. But I'm pretty sure he knew in his heart also that Lot had been saved. Otherwise, the way they word this, they make it seem clear that he was aware that God had saved his nephew. So that's the first part. That's the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah. And it is well deserved. You can say what you will about the Old Testament God being a wrathful, vengeful God. Look how he's giving all kinds of second chances to the people. He's letting, 10 righteous men. Fine. I just find 10, the whole city's spared. 2 cities spared for just 10 righteous men. Couldn't do it. And again, they're not just like, we cheat on our wives sometimes, and we lie once in a while, and there's some thieves, but and there's a bit of corruption at the top. No, this is the people literally worshipped fallen gods, fallen angels. They worship gods that their religion demanded child sacrifices, blood sacrifices, orgies, raping foreigners, It was the Hindu caste system times 10. Everything that we find virtuous, their religion is the complete opposite, because that's what the fallen angels were all about. They wanted to make everything the upside down of what God wanted. So having sex with animals, yeah, go for it. I mean, spreading disease all around that way, yeah. So the city's not only corrupt in their hearts and in sin, and believe that that's virtuous, which means their minds are corrupt, but they're also diseased as can be. Like, they're having blood orgies in child sacrifice, blood running all over the place while they're having sex with all kinds of different partners. Sodomy is named after Saddam. They were having anal sex before soap and antiseptics, which, if you know anything, that's how disease is spread like crazy. So the whole city, it's diseased of the mind, it's diseased of the spirit and soul, it's diseased of the body, everything. That's why it had to be wiped out. Alright, now the second story in this thing is where things get weird. This is called The Sin of Lot's Daughters. And this is where that Professor Brothers sketch gets really funny. So Lot and his 2 daughters left Zoar and settled in the mountains, for he was afraid to stay in Zoar, and his 2 daughters lived in a cave. So he didn't want to flee to the mountains right away because he knew he was old and he wouldn't be able to like run into the mountains. It'd kill him. The trip would kill him. So he wanted to go to Zor, but he also knew that Zor was pretty corrupt itself. You know, he didn't want to live there. So he's like, let's get out of here. Now that we don't have to rush, let's slowly make our way to the mountains. Because this is actually just as dangerous. You know, if they're going to wipe out Sodom and Gomorrah, Zor is just a smaller version of that. So we got to get out of here too. One day, so they go to the mountains, in a cave. One day the older daughter said to the younger, our father's old, and there is no man around here to give us children, as is the custom all over the earth. Let's get our father to drink wine and then sleep with him and preserve our family line through our father. Verse 33. That night they got their father to drink wine, and the older daughter went in and slept with him. He was not aware of it when she lay down or when she got up. The next day the older daughter said to the younger, last night I slept with my father. Let's get him to drink wine again tonight, and you go in and sleep with him so we can preserve our family line through our father. So they got their father to drink wine that night also, and man, even with a hangover. And the younger daughter went in and slept with him. Again, he was not aware of it. So both of Lot's daughters became pregnant by their father. The older daughter had a son. She named him Moab. He is the father of the Moabites of today. The younger daughter also had a son. His name was Ben-Ami. He is the father of the Ammonites of today. So his daughters raped him. I mean, it's kind of like, you know, if you don't trust the Bible, it's kind of like, yeah, or did he rape them and this is just the way they wrote it? You know, I've had that thought too. I doubt it. You know, I feel like the Bible's pretty good about pointing out when men do bad things. Like, they had no problem pointing out when David sinned. They had no problem pointing out how corrupt Solomon became. So they would gladly point out when somebody does something bad. So they wouldn't have a problem saying that Lot did this and it was disgusting. But his daughters had been raised in a society where incest was an okay thing. Now, their father did not believe in incest whatsoever, but they had been raised in this society. All their neighbors, everyone around them, their friends, everybody thought it was perfectly fine. What are you talking about? In fact, it was almost promoted in a lot of these societies. You keep your bloodline pure. Now, that's not the way of Lot and his family, but they also probably didn't, these girls didn't see it as that big of a deal, you know, whatever. Same with rape. Like, they're getting him drunk and raping him. Again, they were raised like, that isn't that big of a deal. Yeah, Dad says it's wrong, but, you know, can't be that wrong because everyone's doing it. Even though they just saw everyone get destroyed, they really didn't understand probably why they were destroyed. You know, they're just following their dad's orders. Ugh. And it's such a lack of faith, too. Like, did you think they were going to just live in the cave the whole time? Did you not think that Lot would probably go over to see Abraham eventually, and you could marry one of his servants or somebody within his household? Like, duh. They were just being dumb and impatient and lacking in faith for the future is what they were doing. And they'd let the society that they'd lived in, that they'd grown up in, corrupt their minds. Their minds had been corrupted. Even though Lot had tried to teach them right and wrong, they'd spent so much time in the city of Sodom that they had become, you know, just like accustomed to incest and rape. Like, it wasn't a big deal, you know. I mean, Dad says it's wrong, but I mean, it's not that big a deal, really, because that was the society that they were raised in. Now, can you imagine what the people of Sodom would have been like who didn't have Lot as their father? How, like, the girls actually knew they had to get their drunk dad because they knew that at least he didn't think it was appropriate. But Sodom thought it was virtuous to do these sort of things. Gomorrah thought it was virtuous to do these sort of things. Their friends, all their neighbors had told these girls from day one, they'd seen their friends marry their dads and uncles. They'd seen, you know, them get pregnant by their brothers and things like this. So, you know, Dad says it's wrong, Lot says it's wrong, but, you know, clearly it's not that big a deal. Plenty of people do it. So let's do it because we need to have children also. Our betrotheds were killed in that thing that just wiped out Sodom. You think that would be a hint to them that something was wrong. And they couldn't wait or even ask a lot. Like, how about we go see your uncle and see if he'll, look out for us now that we're on our own in a cave, and maybe we can marry some of his people in his house. He's got 318 trained warriors. He's got a huge backing. He's got neighbors that are good people. They could have found him a husband. They were just being lacking in faith is all it was. So that wraps up Genesis 19. It's a weird chapter. The destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah is often seen as God's evil wrath in the Old Testament, and why he's a mean God, and the New Testament God is a good one. And we'll get into more when it comes to cities like Jericho and the invasion of the Canaanites and stuff. But no, that's when people don't read the full story. Read the full story of how Abraham and Lot are pleading to save these people, and God accepts so long as they can find just 10 righteous men. And they go to the city we're not just going to wipe the city out. Let's go and make sure that it's actually as bad as we hear. As soon as they walk into the city, every man insists that they deserve to be able to rape these men. All of them. Okay? It's not like a rapist attacked you in New York City in an alley. This is like everyone in New York, including the mayor, saying, hey, you're from Boston. We deserve to rape you. Get over here and let all of us rape you. It's an awful, awful place. They're diseased physically because of just the way they live. They're diseased mentally, and they're diseased spiritually. And they deserved to be wiped out. Can you imagine letting this spread? Let's just say it was just the disease. Let's say you could save their minds and their spirits. But at this time, you can't save the disease that's running rampant throughout the city. You can't. And they're going to spread it if you let them continue to spread. And they're going to spread this message of it being virtuous and a religion to rape and sacrifice and kill babies. Like, that was their religion. That was what was a good, moral, ethical thing to do, was to rape these men who came to the city. But people still say God's a bad guy for wiping them out. It's like, you don't understand your history whatsoever, people, if you think that. All right, everyone, have a blessed afternoon, evening, good morning, whatever it may be.